This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you. No longer at the little house on the east side. Needed to get out of Saratoga for a few days and headed down to Long Island, actually, doing the old mom's garage routine, enjoying myself here on the North Shore for a few days. I am joined, sleeping at my feet, once again, by Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador. And I'm joined on the phone by a guy whose fame has just gone to new heights. Not only was he once again on the Fox coverage of Alabama Day live from Saratoga, but according to at least some of our listeners, there's a new doll with his likeness. Kind of amazing. I thought that a horse player's fame could not rise past the levels of Andy Beyer, who was so famous in the 1970s. He was once considered for a role on The Love Boat. Now we have a doll getting made of the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
So I laughed literally out loud in bed, halfway asleep this morning when I saw the little doll with the pineapple shirt and shorts on, and the darker brownish skin with the little shaved face. So, oh man, I'm sure that will be good for lots of jokes down the line. We'll see where they come up.
Now, the actual truth of it is, this is not a JK doll. It is a doll of an actor who I actually recognize as I look at him more from, he had bit parts back in the day on a TV show I absolutely loved on HBO about 10 years ago called Flight of the Conchords. He's a New Zealand guy. We have at least one listener from New Zealand. Hey, Scott. He's a New Zealand guy named Taika Waititi. Do you have any idea why a semi-obscure New Zealand actor and director would have his own figurine or doll, JK?
I think what they do with those is they just because I've seen, my son's looked at some of them at the store before. They just take like characters from movies, I think, and they'll just kind of make little like dolls for them as kind of like, collector's items. But I believe that he, he's also famous for he wrote the initial screenplay for Moana. If you have a kid, and if you have a kid, you know a little Moana.
You hear The Rock sing in Moana. I mean, that's
right. He also directed. He directed Thor Ragnarok.
He was the director of the actual film?
Yeah, he was the director of Thor. Waititi directed his first major Hollywood film, Marvel Studios' Thor Ragnarok.
Awesome.
And he also was like the voice of one of the characters in there, I think Korg or whatever. So I guess this doll gave, he got this one based on, I don't know what movie. It says director on it. So I guess he just got some credit for that film.
Now, how about this? The best part about this that JK conveniently leaves out because he doesn't want to touch on his secret shame here, wearing an actual Romp Him, the doll, that looks exactly like something JK would wear and would be wearing to the Travers had he not wimped out on the old justifiable run in the Haskell and Travers wager. What do you have to say for yourself?
A couple notes. First off, I don't believe that's a Romp Him.
Oh, no?
I believe it's matching shorts and a shirt. And the funniest part about it is the funniest part about it is I honestly own that shirt and I own those shorts. I've never worn them together, but I do have them.
So a Romp Him has to be stitched together. It can't be a two-piece. Is that?
Yeah, I think a Romp Him is like a female version of a romper. It's like one thing. It's like a short shirt combo where when you gotta go potty, it becomes real creative. How are you gonna work that out?
You learn something every day. For those of you who haven't seen this, please, I think you could find it on either of our Twitter feeds. Heck, I may pin it to mine. It's so great. We'll definitely check it out soon. There's so many directions I want to go here, including driving around on Long Island yesterday. My friend Matt Blankman and I remembering the time we were in a record store out in Huntington that was also a like vintage toy store. So all kinds of crazy stuff. And he was remembering one time we just couldn't stop laughing. And we're going to get the generation gap here on the show. There was a Joey Stivic doll. Now, very few of you, there's like 5% of you who know who Joey Stivic is off the bat. I will then clarify by saying Joey Stivic, who was Archie Bunker's grandson. So at some point in the 1970s, you could purchase a doll of Archie Bunker's grandson. And now, just to put you on the spot, JK, because I think I know the answer to this, do you have any idea who Archie Bunker is?
I do know. He's from, I don't know the name of the show, but no, I know who he is though. But he's on a show.
All in the family. I'm impressed. You knew he was from a TV show, so you're winning there.
I do have here's my one little note about Archie Bunker that I'm not 100% sure about. Would Archie Bunker have voted for Donald Trump? Is there
as many times as possible? I mean,
that's what I thought.
That was sort of the gift. I mean, it's a show that when you watch today, it's like unbelievable it was on TV then. It's honestly one of my favorite shows. You can read it as satire, or as there was a button I once saw in the same toy store that said there were people who truly believed Archie Bunker should run for president. And then, in a weird way, eventually he did. Let's move on to the Pacific Classic. JK, accelerate with an absolute tour de force performance, just running off the screen as many thought he might, and stamping himself, I would have to think, as the favorite at the moment anyway for this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. 115 was the buyer speed figure. The race looked good. There were some good horses in there, some horses who you had picked to potentially upset him going in. They couldn't even sniff him. He ran away and hid. How impressed were you with this 2-5 performance?
Yeah, I was really impressed. I probably wasn't very fair. I think I probably said at some point, maybe a number of times, that he's just like kind of feels like the default horse. Like, I guess I'll pick him because who else am I going to pick? He deserves a little bit more than that, and I'll be sure to give it to him from here on out. Talented horse. John Sadler's really got him going in the right direction since adding the blinkers. I still think that there's a chance that something with it, something else could hop into the equation and cause some problems for him down the line. But right now, you got to consider him one of the favorites.
It was a push button performance, and it was just awesome. The big question that many are going to have with him, and I'm certainly in this camp. In the past, I've questioned John Sadler's ability to ship and win. Of course, he's also had some horses ship and run very well, not necessarily winning races. Stellar Wind leaps to mind, probably was best in the 2015 Distaff at Keeneland. So it's not like they travel and they don't fire. Is it fair to question Sadler's stats shipping when you're evaluating Accelerate's chances in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic?
It's always important to think about. It's always something you want to consider. However, I've gotten to this conversation as of late, and this might be a sidetracked conversation that we might need to have anyways. I think that the trainer stats are valuable. They can help you find capable and able trainers. However, I think putting all of your eggs in the basket of the trainer stat and not looking at the individual horse and the individual race, in my opinion, is problematic and can lead you down some wrong paths. One of our listeners actually was messaging me over the weekend about, and I'm trying to find a couple of them here, about a trainer, a friend of ours, actually, Mike McCarthy, out on the West Coast, and was kind of quoting some stats, and one of them that he threw out was like better with females 19% than males 13%. I just think that that's circumstantial. I don't think that when you see Mike McCarthy with a female racehorse, you want to give that horse extra credit. Or if you see him with a male, you downgrade the horse. I think the same thing about Sadler's situation is, what are the circumstances in which he's developed this awful record with horses that he's traveled with? and things like that. And so I think that you have to try to work through that. And, you know, Stellar Wind obviously ran through that. She ran well. She ran much better than I thought she would in the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland when she ran second. So there's a lot of different situations, and I just try not to get too wrapped up in it, although I think that it can lead you to some quality trainers, and it can help you in certain situations. Overall, it can sometimes be leading.
I think that in so many things in horse racing, it's not that idea to let price be your guide. I'll say this. That stat is enough that it would keep me off of any kind of future bet interest in Accelerate, I guess, unless the number was just ridiculous, and I should poke around and look what the latest numbers are, assuming they've been updated since the weekend. When there is a horrendous stat or a positive stat, it'll make me inclined, if I'm on the bubble about using or not using. That's the kind of thing that could push me in one direction or another, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to be driving the train for me. Just because you mentioned it, just a tangent off a tangent, if you will, something, again, we like to play sometimes on the DRF Players podcast. The idea of fillies versus males, I do get that certain trainers' programs would lend themselves more to one sex or the other simply because of the way that you train and fillies being lighter framed. But I'd want to look at it and have it make sense. The idea that a trainer would be better first out with fillies than with colts, that might mean something to me, simply because I believe fillies being lighter framed, especially young fillies, easier to get fit. So a certain program that might not get a colt fit to run first out could get a filly to run well first out. That's logical to me, and I'd put that in. But looking at it in macro like that, I agree. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
No, and I also think that I think a lot of it has to do with your trainer. I mean, your owner profile, right? I don't know for sure, and I'd have to look, but I think Eclipse Thoroughbreds, they give, obviously one of Mike's biggest clients. I think they probably buy more fillies than they do colts. At least it feels that way. I could be completely wrong about that, but it feels that way. And so, I think a lot of times if you have more opportunities in your barn than that, I would imagine that Todd, this is all a guess, we can look, I would imagine that Todd probably excels more with male horses than he does with female horses, because he has more male horses. If you want to get to the Derby, you send him to Todd, right? So I feel like he's got more shots with these male horses, and it's something that we can look up. But more importantly, I just think that you have to be careful when you have to consider the individual more than you consider the trainer, because it's about the horse on the racetrack. 100%. And I think that you want to look at the individual, and in my opinion, more than you want to look at who's saddling the horse.
I think that makes absolute sense, and I would wager there's very little signal in that stat of McCarthy fillies versus colts. But I'm just also wanted to point out that there could be. If you drill down further, you might find some signal in that data. My gut is not much there at that fairly zoomed out level. So new prices for the Breeders' Cup Classic: Accelerate 11-2. If all goes well and he makes the gate, certainly going to be shorter than that on the day, but not a price that I'm interested in leaping on at this time. What do you think about 11-2 from here for Accelerate for the Breeders' Cup?
I'd respectfully decline.
It's not nuts.
No, it's not horrendous. I mean, if he wins the Awesome again, but I think another horse is going to win that one, and that's probably the horse that I would want to have a wager on. In fact, I have a text already out to the famous man out in Vegas to find out what a number will be on a horse that we'll probably talk about in a few minutes.
You're not referring to McKinsey?
I am referring to McKinsey.
Oh, okay. When did you think he was going to come up today?
Oh, no, I just thought you were going to keep going down the list of horses that were.
I see. Anyway, misunderstanding. I thought you wanted me to pause before talking about him when you said that. Let's go.
I thought you were going to work down the list.
Gotcha. No, McKinsey is the one I wanted to go right to. And 25-1 available to listeners at certain places in the UK and Ireland. Let me see how across the board those 25s are, or if that's an outlier at one shop. Yeah, that's an outlier at one shop. You're seeing more like 20s and 16s across the board. Still pretty interesting, yeah?
A serious question. And I just thought about this just now. With my upcoming travel ahead of me, I'm going to London on Thursday. What's the one on every corner, Ladbrokes or whatever?
You can, I don't want to give too much love to one over another in case one of them ends up sponsoring us one of these days. But you've got Ladbrokes and William Hill, or you're going to see a lot of places. Coral, you're going to see a lot of places. Betfred of the ones that that's one of the better numbers out there at 20 right now. But yeah, you'll have no problem finding 16 on the street when you're walking over there in London. And since you brought that up, and before we loop back and talk about the Alabama, so you're abandoning us for our Travers show. It's not like it's an important, show or anything, JK. You just go and have fun in London.
Look, I'm trying to get like you, PTF. I mean, we can't all be world travelers, right? I figure.
I don't go during the most important race days, and when I do, I make sure I show up for the podcast. Let's put it that way.
Well, I have to work through the timing of it, right? There's a chance I could still make it work. I'd have to kind of work backwards through.
How about this? I remember a couple of years ago, it was our Dubai World Cup show, and you couldn't make. I think it was the Dubai World Cup show. It was something important, and you couldn't make it. And we had the debut of Confidential Kinchin. Old school shout out for the listeners who've been with us for the last couple of years. Any chance we could see an appearance from Confidential Kinchin or some semblance thereof, where you send us your thoughts race by race and we drop them into the show?
Absolutely. It sounds like a bunch of fun, and I'll do them all in an English accent. No, I won't do that. I will use. I'll try to slip in some English phrases at least. Can't be asked. One of my favorite ones. I can't be asked.
I don't think you can say that on the DRF Players podcast, but that's okay.
No, you can't be. I thought you can say that. Can't be asked. I thought it's really like the translation is I cannot be asked.
No. I'll explain it off air. I'm glad that was the word you were saying. The expression is another word that you couldn't say. Anyway, let's move on. We do have some special guests for the Travers show. Yet to be confirmed, but it sounds like the return of the director of Bloodstock for Windstar. Not speaking of not very important position or anything. Our buddy Sean Tugel is on. He's on standby, and we obviously have to have back in the fold the Sultan of Schenectady himself, the Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Chris Pipito Pipes, because as listeners will recall, we did the Travers show with him last year, gave out a bunch of winners, and then went and all of us hit the pick six. So Pipes will be back for sure. Maybe Sean Tugel, maybe Confidential Kinchin. It's going to be a great show. Maybe it'll have to be an extended show. I'll talk to producer Craig about that. Speaking of shows and timing, FYI, going to jump off here probably 5 minutes early today. I'm getting a train into the city to go see this new print of Chinatown down at Film Forum. I'm having sort of a culture / non-racing week. I talked about yesterday driving through those Long Island towns out on the North Shore in Suffolk with Matt Blankman. You could probably guess my slump at the windows at Saratoga has not gotten better. It's only gotten worse since the last time we talked. Fortunately, have only made about 2 bets, but one of them, I was about 3 clear in the stretch and got run down. And then the other, in the 4th race on Saturday, I don't know how many lengths the horse was clear, but I will say this. If there had been in-running wagering on race 4 at Saratoga, the longtime leader, the number 7, the big drama horse for Chad Brown, whose name I blacked. I'm not going to say I forgot. I blacked it out. Would have been 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000. You name your price to win before getting run down. So I decided to take a few days off, and I'm actually excited. If you told me at the beginning of the meet that the Wednesday of Travers meet, what would I be doing? I might have guessed the degenerate doubleheader. I might have guessed sitting at the paddock bar. I would not have guessed that I was super excited to be going to see the Frozen musical with Perrin at a Broadway matinee. But that is the world in which we live right now, JK.
Wow, that's something else. That is something else. I tell you what, that same horse that beat you, I learned a lesson. TV's Matt Bernier did not teach me before. Don't make a wager that if you lose will cause you to sweat. We talked about this before. When I lose bets, I start sweating instantly.
Yeah.
And I kind of black out for a second. And I was involved on the same horse that you're naming, the Chad Brown horse. And when he got beat, like I started sweating, and then but then I had to come back on TV like sweating. So
oh God, you look like me in Harvey's apartment.
Warm.
That's pretty funny. I did want to go on a little bit about that just because I just wanted to explain, because I still haven't really fully explained to you how 2 years ago, weirdly it didn't happen last year, but 2 years ago at Saratoga, there were a bunch of horses who everything lined up, where they'd been horses I'd heard about and go to the paddock and they look great, corroborated clocker information with other clockers who, like the horses even more than the published numbers. This was the case with Oscar Performance. Syndergaard was one. There were a bunch of them 2 years ago. And I just remember saying to myself, I need to, when those situations come up, when everything is in place and I go to the paddock and the horse is just screaming winner to me visually, I need to learn to step up and make a big bet. Now, I was not going to bet this fourth race on Saturday at all. I was scarred. Steam Engine was the 10-strike horse who ran pretty well, ran very well on Friday. I bothered to take my money out of my pocket. Horse got run down. And that was like, okay, I'm just going to bet the Alabama tomorrow at that point. I'd had enough. I was not going to bet. But I went to the paddock just wanting to see these horses, because I'd heard about this Chad since I think June was the first time I heard about, Chad has this big drama. It's going to win up at Saratoga. So I had that. I wasn't going to bet on that narrative alone. But then when I went down to the paddock and the horse walked by looking like an Elgin marble, up on the toes, all the right kind of energy, looked fast, was on the toes, was in danger of maybe getting over the top or boiling over. So I kept the eye on. Everything looked good. I thought that he stayed within himself, and I was proud. I did not make the big wager, but I made a wager when I was going to make no wager. So it was like the dynamic was the same, and I just felt so smart. I saved. There were a couple other horses I thought looked good. I saved one-way exactas, whatever it was, 2 with 7 and 5 with 7, I think were the numbers I used. And the gates broke, and I even got to have that smug, oh, man, I should have bet more. I think I said to myself about 3 times during the race, I should have bet more. And then top of the lane, double handful, my route. I was happy with my route. I yelled, put on a show. Well, he put on a show all right. Not the one I wanted to see. And there you go. So that was my little therapy I had to explain, and that made me just say, hey, let's go back to that whole thing of not betting for a few days.
Put on a show. That deserves better, man. That's a real good one. You deserve better than that for that route.
Isn't that what it looked like turning for home?
Yeah, I mean, he buried the Todd horse that was supposed to be really nice, the one that had been worked with a Todd Stakes horse, worked with the Windstar horse that they were supposed to like that didn't break, and then worked with that horse Opry, the turf horse that ran really well off the turf. I mean, he had worked with all 3 of those, so he was well meant, and the Saratoga buzz.
Good, by the way. That horse is called Principled, and he's going to be good. Yes, he was fast, but I still think breeding-wise, body-wise, I think that horse needs more ground. I think he'll run much better late when he can run slower early. So I wouldn't give up on Principle. The Chad Brown horse I keep talking about is called Ahead of Plan. I don't know what to make of him next time, JK. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a gag reflex and probably just want to not bet on or against him the next time. And then the winner of the race, endorsed for Godolphin, lots of positive word about that horse, ends up getting the job done, staying on very gamely late and winning at 8-1. What are your thoughts on those horses going forward?
Yeah, the Chad horse ahead of plan. He's one of those horses to me that, and this is kind of a new thought for me. I haven't developed it into a proper hypothesis yet, but the fact that they run so hard throughout the entire race, you have to have those horses really fit. And I want to see how he runs second out. Maybe that was the tightener that he needed before he wins by 11. Because now he'll be the next start. He'll be fit enough. Not that Chad's one that sends him over there not fit, but
but they come on for the runs. I mean, look at Good Magic.
Right.
Granted, Good Magic ran huge against the track at his first start, but he didn't win. And
No.
Not saying
the way
it's going to be any good magic, because I mean,
No,
I don't. But that doesn't look like he wanted to stay to 6 furlongs, let alone go any further. But
But that Chad thing can absolutely run. I mean, he popped there, and he was clear by 2, before he even got to the fall. I mean, really talented horse, and the fact that they paid $400,000 for or whatever it was for a big drama says a lot.
That's a good little tip, actually. When this is something people always ask what to look for in maiden races. That was at a February sale where they would have breezed. I hope I'm getting this right.
Yes, you are. There was a breeze. There was a breeze at OBS.
And so when you see a sire, and you don't need to know the sires backwards forwards, you can just see big drama stud fee. I think it's what, 10,000.
Yeah, and 5 or 10, one of the two.
You see that horse. They paid that much for the horse, not as a yearling, but as a 2-year-old. When they had an opportunity to breeze, that horse is going to be fast. And when I say fast, I mean quick out of the gate, an attribute that usually you're going to be again out of the gate. It was like, okay, this race is over. It's
and
that's game set match right there.
And some listeners obviously know about this, but if you're newer to the sport and you're newer to this, to handicapping, and you don't know, those OBS works where this big drama colt, the ahead of plan, worked 10 seconds flat. You can actually watch the video on the OBS website, and so you can actually see how they did it, how they were traveling. One of our buddies, Jack Jenkins, I think is one of the best at actually looking at these works and evaluating how the horse is gonna stretch out, or how the horse is gonna run in their first actual start. So there's definitely some learning opportunities when you're taking a look at those work videos from the OBS and some of the other ones.
I wonder if Jack would be willing to share. That could be a very interesting article potentially, but maybe he considers it part of his edge.
No, I think that it's funny. I think if you ask Jack, I think a lot of it it'd be very interesting to hear him attempt to describe it. But I think like some things, it's like you just can. It's just like you do it enough, you just kind of can tell.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's within some people's skill set and not within others as well. But if you're somebody who's inclined towards doing any kind of paddock work or delving into equine physicality, to use our listener and friend Michelle Wilrich's favorite phrase, you might be somebody who'd enjoy looking at those workout videos. But I think it's always helpful to do it a few times with somebody. If we could have a webinar or something with watching a few of them and having Jack give his comments, would probably point people in the right direction, just to try to get a sense of what somebody like that sees. But anyway, that's another good little tangent that'll hopefully find people have some winners.
You know who else would be great? And I meant to say this earlier, but it's a great opportunity to do it now. Another person that would be remarkable to have if we do that future webinar would be Sean Tugel. Like Sean, yeah. A lot of these, being around and kind of being in the scene and meeting all these horsemen and trainers and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys that really understand horses, but there's a lot of guys that really understand horses that do not understand handicapping. Sean is not one of those guys. He has a phenomenal opinion as a handicapper, but he also really understands the behind the scenes, the horseman vibe. And he'll say things to you sometimes that are really eye opening. Well, wait a second. If they could have ran this horse in this spot, but they decided to run him in this spot, then it must mean that they're feeling very confident because of this. Things that we might have missed because of the behind-the-scenes aspects of running a big-time stable and having these really expensive and valuable horses.
Sean will be on the show, hopefully, all going according to plan on Friday to talk about the Travers. But right now, JK, let's talk about the Alabama. It was Eskimo Kisses. Paul Matisse's faith in her rewarded. I didn't talk to him to see if he scored out on the race or not. I needed her to come with Talk Voof to me. We'll get to her and that ride in a minute. But Eskimo Kisses getting the job done. Super impressive. 100 Beyer speed figure. What did you think of this? What do you think is her? Did the mile and a quarter move her up that much? Is she a serious player in the division going forward?
Well, we mentioned Paul being a big fan of the horse and on the show last week. And so I'm 98% sure that Paul won't mind me sharing this, but I asked him if he hit Kisses and he said, not really. And then he said, blew all the picks. So, I think that he sometimes you can just a horse can kind of let you down so many times when you back him, and then you kind of approach the horse a little bit more timidly than you might have normally, and then you kind of get left wanting and don't really have the opportunity there.
What race busted him in the picks? Was there a weird result? Was he anti-rushing fall like you?
No, I doubt it. It might have been the second race, or maybe who won before her? Was there? No, that was that horse that Pipes like, the 10 horse that wired. I don't know where where he got funny. I don't think Paul would have got beat on the rush move. Just like, I was against her, but I used it, but I was only alive to move. But to the race itself, I talking to Jake about it afterwards. We were both alive to Vuve, and Jake obviously is good friends with Rudolph Brissett. So he had
Jake Vallis, Prince of Brothers, sometimes known as the Prince of Keeneland.
He had a strong rooting interest there, and the last time we were standing together watching the race, he was screaming the horse was going too fast, was Justify in the Derby. And I told him they're all going fast. They're all going fast. And I tried the same thing here by saying they're all going fast. They're all going fast. But she just went too fast. And I don't want to knock the idea. I love the idea that they were trying to accomplish, which was to get out in front and to take the race to everyone else. I just think she probably needed to go a second or so slower to be able to hold them off. She almost held on for third and just fell apart in like the last 60, 70 yards. I don't want to Julian the plane. That's the plane. Many winners and jobs avoid that could get the job done for them. And so I guess the only
circumstantial. I just feel like when you handicap that race, you should know that there's going to be a speed horse in there that you can just stalk and take the way that we described it, take over. If they crawl, you take the lead. But if you have a chance to just he's supposed to have a great mind, supposed to be able to see that he can stop. If you can get that position, I've got to question the plan. If it was the plan, I think it was a bad plan. That's a good plan in a race where there's no pace. And we do knock horses for going too slow on the lead, but obviously the sort of moto, master of the obvious problem that happens in these situations is going too fast, especially when adding ground. I thought it was pretty questionable, JK, and you know me, I don't like to question aggressive rides.
No, of course. And if you think about
it one bit.
If you flip the positions, right? If you flip it from, and don't get me wrong, they were all beaten 6 at least, but if you flip the positions of She's a Julian, Talk Vuve for me,
to me. You say that every time.
I don't know. Talk Vuve. I don't know why. She's a Julie actually held on for second. I think the most important thing that I learned in this race was, it was a frustrating moment of getting beat, but I did take away. I think a lot of times in these races when you're wrong, you can still take away a positive. And the positive that I took away is that that my brain can see the false closer stretch out move, which is what I thought Midnight Bisou was. I thought she was a false stretch out closer, and that made me feel comfortable and confident that I can try to find those other opportunities later, which I think there's a ton of value in them. She was 6-5. She was the favorite in the race, and she was never winning at any point of the race. Was she ever winning? She ranged up. And when she ranged up, I even felt like she's going to hit a wall because she moved too early. She doesn't want to go this far. So very talented animal. I think she could be really, really dangerous in like the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint, kind of cutting back to that one turn situation where she could really, really kind of make that run for a full 3/8. And I'd be interested to see what they decide to do with her.
You ducked one of my questions about Eskimo Kisses. What do you think about her chances going forward?
I think she's good, but I think that when the trip notes come out on this one, it's going to say setup. And when I see setup, ran well with a setup, I'm going to try to beat her next time. She's going to be facing others. She's not going to always get a 46 second half in a 1.25 mile race. Well, she's not going to run at a 1.25 mile again this year. So that's one thing. She's going to always be running at a 1 1/8 miles, and she's going to be closing into 47s and 48s all year long. Or closing into more talented and faster, more tactical horses. So congratulations to her on winning the Grade 1 Alabama, but I wouldn't bet her in another race this year.
She wouldn't probably be – I wouldn't be, like, cutting in line to bet her. At the same time, if there's a lot of pace in the Breeders' Cup distaff and stamina really comes into play, that mile and an eighth and mile and a quarter play very differently. But if there's enough pace and stamina comes into play, that could be different. The mile and a quarter could play like the mile and eighth could play like a mile and a quarter. And if they want to let a very talented Grade 1 winning filly go off at 10, 12, whatever. And I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but if it were to, because of a coming together of circumstances, I would be awfully interested. I wouldn't write it off completely.
There is not a race that can be run on the planet in a circumstance that can be run, a pace scenario, a meltdown, a paceless race that she could win if Elate is in the race. Elate will beat her in every single circumstance out there, no matter what happens. I can't ever design a race where she would beat Elate if they were in the same spot.
Fair enough. Elate supposedly training so well and going to be seen in the Beldame coming up. Very excited to see her return to the races. Now, horse that Elate worked with, unfortunately, will not be competing in the Travers. I came so close to betting this horse future Travers from as far back as May. Grateful I haven't done it. Horse that I really like. I believe his best race is still ahead of him, but we're not going to see it in the Travers. I'm talking about Hofburg. News coming down. We've had so many horses added to the Travers mix lately. Hofburg now not one of them. I'm bummed. I know you weren't that big a fan anyway, so you're probably bummed. I'm bummed because I don't get to bet on him. You're bummed because you don't get bet against him. But other news about the Travers coming through since the last show we had is that Mendelssohn will be running. Obviously, I'm on record as one of the world's bigger Mendelssohn fans, I think. Even I don't think I could bet him in this spot, JK. How about yourself?
I don't understand. I want to know. I want to find, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it exists. I want to see the soundbite in which someone put a microphone in front of Aiden's face and asked him what's with this decision. They have to, I mean, he would not continue to beat his head against the wall if there wasn't something there, right? If there wasn't some reason why he felt like this would happen. Now, maybe he is banging his head against the wall because winning a race like this makes this horse worth 2 to 3 times more than he's worth right now. I get that, but man, he was pretty bad in the race where Firenze Fire won, and I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was weird, and I have to say though, the combination of how the barn's been going in the USA. I mean, obviously Athena did win the Belmont Oaks. Can't take that away, but we saw all of the horses underperform at Arlington. There's been talk, and I hate to really even bring this kind of stuff up because I think there's a lot of narrative to it, and I don't know how much truth there is to it. But, he's having a tough season overall, and there's been some talk about a potential bug at Ballydoyle. I just can't. I mean, part of me will be happy if he does well, simply because I think too many people were too smug about that meaningless run in the Kentucky Derby where he was eliminated at the break. But I don't think I can back that opinion up with money. I definitely, part of why I've essentially taken the last 2 weeks off and tread so lightly last week is I do plan on making a run on Travers Day. I believe for me, even if I have a bankroll set aside for a meet, there's a separate bankroll I set aside for the biggest, most important betting days of the year. Travers is one that's on that list, been very historically good to me / us, JK, the last few years, and I have no problem coming back at it. I don't see including him on tickets, do you?
Oh no, I'm gonna be over there. So I'm gonna be over on the other side of the pond. I'm gonna be trying to find some prices on some of the other horses if he happens to be overbet in their market, which I would imagine he would be, right?
It's actually not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. To take a look at who's pricing up the Travers. Yeah, I mean he'll be hammered. I mean he was way shorter there for the last 2 races than he was here. I don't see any reason. I think for them, in Aidan O'Brien, we trust is probably the byword, and he probably will be bet once again, regardless of what he should be. Here, I could see him being almost ignored and some crazy price. And I guess at some point, maybe I have to say, just risk reward. If it doesn't cost that much to include in a pick, I mean, maybe you do put a 50-cent line through him if he's going to be all of 10-1, which he almost has to be.
Can you give me, just for my brain, can you give me one reason why he ran so bad in the Dwyer?
No.
Not one?
I got nothing. Can you?
Maybe. I mean, they put him into the race. I mean, they ran a little bit.
But I mean,
early.
He's a front-running horse. I mean, he's run well when he was good. He ran well with every running style.
But he didn't.
Then he'd front run.
But like our friend Craig Bernick said before the Derby, he wasn't gonna have to run that fast. He wasn't gonna ever have to run as fast as he did.
But I mean, how's it going to be a better situation in the darn Travers?
The note said he lost footing at the break. I didn't notice that, but it didn't go that fast.
I didn't. Yeah,
the other
prime position, and it was an absolute. I imagine every trip handicapper in the world put no finish on that, and that's tough to come back from.
Here's the other thing I'll say about Mendelssohn is, won't the 1.25 miles suit him better than the 1-turn mile?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, just there's a world in which you could try to get cute and creative, but it's really about price at this point.
Oh, this is very interesting, actually. I'm looking right now. There's not a lot of places that have the Travers priced up, but I am seeing. Let me see how many books have this, because this is fascinating. He ranges in price from a low of 7 at a muggish high street shop all the way to 16 in wise guy type markets. So that might be the tail right there. Him being exactly like we said, the heck away at the high street bookie. But, maybe there's going to be some wise guy places here, or just in our market here, closer to that 15, 16.
The draw is going to matter for him, right? I mean, he needs to draw outside.
I think that would probably help. Good Magic right now, a huge favorite with the removal of Hofberg from the market, seeing him as short as 11-10, which almost suggests odds on. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a defensive use for me, I guess.
Yeah, I who I'm not interested in, and I guess we're just getting ahead of ourselves, but it is an exciting week. It's just like Derby, right? We can talk about it early.
Absolutely.
I am not interested in the filly, Wonder Godot. I don't get it. She won she ran second to Monomoy Girl in the Oaks. She won on the Poly going 1.25 miles against a bunch of horses that aren't very good. And then she won in the Slop, like in another race with a bunch of horses that aren't very good. I mean, I don't. She's going to be 5-1.
How are you going to evaluate Gronkowski? I'm going to take a wild guess that the workout report for you is going to mean a whole lot.
Yeah, the workout report's going to mean a lot, and then the final unfolding of the pace scenario, which doesn't feel very, very snappy at the moment, just kind of taking a quick look at it here, right? I mean, what is Tenfold going to be on the lead? Good Magic? I mean, if Good Magic finds the lead, they're not going to be going very fast. Bravazzo won't touch the lead. Catholic Boy won't touch the lead. I don't remember exactly
We've
King
seen
Zachary.
him run aggressively when there was nobody Catholic Boy, but on the turf, so...
Mendelssohn on the lead. I mean, it doesn't feel like they're going to go very quick.
Yeah, I mean, with a horse like Mendelssohn at this point, you would think about a radical strategy like that. We'll get more into it. Just give me, before we leave this discussion, because we have two things we have to talk about, and we only have like 11 minutes, so we got to rock and roll here. But just give me your gut on Catholic Boy at 8-1 on offer right now.
He's a gutsy horse that has run down a horse that I still believe is talented and analyze it. And I would definitely give Catholic Boy a look as a use. I don't think he's any horse I would build the day around.
I think that's fair. But 8-1 feels pretty nice for a horse who's a fighter, who's shown talent, and in just one of these years that could be, if Good Magic turns out he doesn't, for whatever reason, whether it's the Travers Monmouth double that gets to him, which is historically hard, or if he doesn't really want that extra ground, and he's going to be odds on, a course like Catholic Boy could be an interesting alternative at that type of price. All right, two things we need to talk about. One, we have to go back and apologize. I didn't even realize, JK, this was my bad. We sort of rushed our discussion last week of the race run at the wrong distance. we probably should have waited, put a pin in that, and come back and talked about it today for real for the first time. Because I guess you had said something about it that was not accurate. The race was never meant. Well, you explain.
Yeah, I mean, I thought
I don't remember what you said, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the whole idea, like why I got approached at the racetrack 3 times and had a conversation with a trainer about it, was because it was an off the turf race that was supposed to be, I don't want to say downgraded, but like downsized from the 1 1/16 for 2-year-old down to 7 furlongs, but instead they ran it at 1 1/8. That was the impression that I had gotten from so many conversations that I just assumed that was the truth, and that was our fault. I guess we should have double checked it.
Yeah, but I mean, I had said it correctly reading from the Dave Grenning article, but I didn't then correct you when you said that. The race, it was just a carded race that was run at the wrong distance. We had a lot of listeners chime in on this. Some of our sharpest listeners, in fact, and big thanks to the one who pointed out that mistake, because that's, when you're talking about somebody else making a mistake, it's embarrassing to make any mistake of your own. Another comment that came in was, how much does the 16th really matter? To that, I would simply say that in a game where millions are won and lost by a nose, a 16th of a mile matters quite a lot, and it's a very big deal. Obviously, you agree, JK, or we wouldn't have brought it up. Absolutely. I mean, no matter how you look at it, we'll put on the silly hat, but no matter how you look at it, in a game that much money is wagered on and that big of a production and a show is put on with these horses running and these events and tens of millions of dollars of horses loading into the gate, it's probably a mistake that you want to avoid making. It's not as drastic or as egregious as once illustrated. We thought it was from it being a difference between 7 to 1 1/8. Or 7 to 9, I guess would be the correct way to say it. So still, needs to be addressed and needs to be figured out, and still probably not fair to the bettor. And maybe some different ways to try to make that better. But I want to get there. But just to head off at the comment of, you're criticizing, they made a mistake the same way you guys made a mistake. Well, 2 reasons that's not exactly right. One is podcast for entertainment value, not asking anybody on the DRF podcast. You'd have made a fortune over the years just back JK and against me, the rushing fall this weekend. Normally, people don't bet on us. There's not that much involved. The thing is, we took this opportunity to make a mistake and to try to make it present facts and dealing with the situation. And the other thing I wanted to apologize for in my discussion of it last week is I think I was too cynical. I said, I think very plainly, that I didn't expect anything to happen in terms of making this situation right. And then I had some more conversations and I examined some historical precedent, and I don't believe that's necessarily right, or it's certainly not the way that it has to be. Yes, I agree with JK and what you said last week, that if this had been caught before a race went official, a no contest would be appropriate. However, once the race is settled, that can't be accomplished. But, and this gets back to the precedent, years ago, race at River Downs, it turned out that the wrong horse had been entered. Mike Maloney wrote a letter to the Ohio Racing Commission, and they ended up calculating the amount of takeout that the track had made in error on that race in Ohio, and they used that money to seed a pool. So the track was not making any benefit from that mistake at the public's expense. I think that is a fabulous idea and something that hopefully is being considered in addition to doing this investigation and determining what, if any, fines, suspensions need to be made. Because I do believe that's an appropriate measure too. Not knowing all the particulars, not participating in the investigation, I don't know to whom those should go. But the same way that a jockey, a trainer, a horse identifier has consequences when the rules aren't followed, so should a racing official. I think that's just common sense. And the idea of a make good by seeding a pool, publicize what the race is, let people know they're going to be getting something much closer to a positive expectation in it. I love this idea, and I just wanted to do what we could to promote it here on the podcast, as we ourselves admit our mistakes in our previous discussions.
And here's the truth of the fact. The truth is like, if they were to take the 200,000 or whatever it is, I'm just making up a number, and seed the early pick 5 one day at Saratoga, I think they'd probably get their money back.
That's right. That's a good point too.
If you think about how many people would jump into a pool, a pick 5 pool at Saratoga that was seeded with $200,000.
So it's great marketing, it's great business, and it's what's right. So there you have it. There's our thought, our little bit of free consulting on the race run at the wrong distance, thrown out there in a nutshell. Before we go, JK, about 5 minutes left in the show, assuming you're done talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go on to a really interesting listener question. This listener is gathering money from coworkers to try to indoctrinate them into the game we love, try to get them playing horses. And he used sort of a vague term, I think it was used a vague term saying, if we have a couple of $100, which pool should I construct a wager to try to play to get the newbies excited? I think the specifics of the money, a couple hundred might literally just mean 200. It might mean 400 or 500. For the way that I'd answer the question, I think changes a little bit if we're talking about 200 versus 400 or 500. But what's your gut as to which pool our listener should be playing for the colleagues on Travers Day?
We're going to say the same thing here, Pete, with the, in respect of the money. I would, if it was 200, I would look at the first place I would start would be I would look at the double with the sword dancer leading into the Travers. That would be the first opportunity I would look at to kind of, hook them for more than one race, be able to have the interest of showing that the horses run on grass and on dirt. I would imagine that both of those races will take place on NBC. So I would start there and look to see where my opinion lie. Then, this is still talking $200. Then I would look back one more race, which potentially would be the Alan H. Jerkins, or the Alan Jerkins. H. Alan Jerkins. I always screw that up. Or maybe I'll just start saying the Alan Jerkins.
You can get away with that.
It could be that race. So, that's also a very interesting dynamic to be able to use a race like that. And obviously where your handicap opinion lie and decide if that makes any sense. So maybe the pick 3. I think I would probably stay away from the pick 4 with $200. I would stay away from the pick 5 with $200. If you have $300, $400, $500, $600, probably $400, $500, $600, I would then look at the pick 4 and the pick 5. I would not play the pick 5 unless the first leg of the pick 5 is a very strong opinion where you feel like you understand what is going to happen in the race. Don't play the pick 5 just to play it. I would imagine they're going to keep a late out of the pick 5. That would be my guess, that they'll keep her out of with the personal ensign. They'll probably try to keep her out.
I said Beldame before, but I was wrong. She's going in the personal ensign, right?
That's what I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I have a mistake jar for me on that one.
So, I would take a look at that. Look, I think to your point is you want to do two things here, which is it's a very hard thing to do. Your first goal should be to preserve their money. You don't want to lose their money because no matter what happens, that's not something that's going to leave a good taste in their mouth. You want to try to preserve their money, but you also want to try to be smart and create some value. And those two things.
And that's different than you. So you feel like it really is different betting those other people's money because I've seen you. Your first thing isn't let's preserve money. That's nowhere on the list. You're trying to find value, but you do think it's appropriate to shift your focus a little bit when you're dealing with newbies in this context. I think that's smart, but I just want to clarify.
Because I think that when some of the tickets we'll put together are with other horse players that are just looking to diversify their investment.
Single in the first leg of a pick 6, you bust. Everybody understands we were trying to get huge value the rest of the way.
Exactly. We were trying to accomplish something great there, and we came up short. I think the other thing about racing is, as we talk about it on the show, is that you're going to lose more than you win. Horse players understand that, and they're okay with it. They understand that that's how it all unfolds. New players don't fully grasp that yet, and by making them lose the first time, it doesn't make them leave with a great taste in their mouth. So. And then at the same time, though, you don't want to hit a pick 4 where you invested $400 and you get back $327. That's also not the greatest.
That's going to turn people off for life also, I would think.
Right. So you got to find that middle ground where, you whatever. And you can also make sure you throw the disclaimer at them. Look, we're going to bet 400 to try to win 4,000. I could go and bet 400 to win 800. But I don't want to kind of limit us with that. I want to try to do this, and here's where we go. You can kind of give them that disclaimer too, so that they kind of have an expectation of what you're trying to accomplish.
I like it. Maybe we'll return to it ring bet style. Maybe we'll return to it on Friday's show. Maybe we'll get Confidential Kinchin to throw something in there. I doubt that a late will be able to be tied into any bet pertaining to the Travers, but if in the event that she can be, that is one place that I would say, don't wimp out. Go ahead and single for the bet.
And I've always found that two things. I've always found that new players get very excited regardless of the price. You can have a single horse in a bet. They don't care if they're 1 to 5 or 1 to 9. The fact that there's 12 horses or 10 horses or 8 horses in the race and you only picked one because there's a lot of things that let you know that she was going to win, they still get excited about that, even if the price is short, if you can tie them into a multi-race bet. So that's always fun for people. The second thing is if you let us know the dollar amount, that can be part of the Confidential Kinchin thing. I'll say how I would play it.
I like it.
If I had that.
So hopefully we'll get that dollar amount via Twitter, and we'll get that done. And I couldn't agree more about that idea of, for the new players, the thrill of being on the winner. I told the story about my friend with the unfortunate name who bet on Raging Bull. And what was Raging? Even money, and he looked like a lottery. To pick out a horse, at the horse, more money than you in. Player, that's for every player, but especially player to experience. JK and I, you're getting it. We're just about a quick final thought.
I'll miss you guys this week, but I'll like I said, we're gonna try to get there in some way, but. Going to go check out the other Kinchin, do his thing. He's got 2 shows this weekend in London. He plays SW4 Festival on Saturday, and then he plays Creamfields, up over closer to Liverpool and Manchester on Sunday. So I'm going to go and hit both of those and then get back in town.
It's York this weekend, JK. I don't know if you can steal a day. And That's one of the great racing festivals of the summer up there.
I talked to Nick Luck, and the opportunity is there. I just don't know what time I'm going to get there on Friday, so it might not work.
All right. That's all the time we have. I want to thank Confidential Kinchin. I want to thank all of you for listening, most of all with a quick shout-out to Willie Nile, Travis Stone, and producer Craig. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. I'll be back on Friday. May you win all your photos.